thank you all very much. So I hear that today was the last day of classes. Is that right? Oh, so they're disappointed. It's tomorrow. And then I guess finals start shortly thereafter. This will not be on any of your finals, so do not worry about it, taking notes or anything like that. I'm very excited to be here today, and I'm very glad that I can talk to you about what's going on in the transportation field here in Illinois. But I want to ask a question before I get started. How many of you are actually graduating this year? And those people that are graduating, how many people are going to work for IDOT? You guys are killing me. Okay, it looks like we got some work to do for recruiting next year. I want to talk to you a little bit about our state transportation system here in Illinois because it is such an important part of everyday life here in Illinois. I was mentioning earlier in a meeting that I had with university executives and professors here. It is woven into our fabric here, not only in Illinois but across the country. You can't walk out your door without accessing the transportation system. You can't sit in your house without accessing the transportation system because the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the furniture you use, any other things you have in your house, were all brought to you through transportation. So transportation touches all of our lives every single day. And just to give you a sense of the breadth of transportation here in Illinois, I want to tell you a little bit about it. We have a total of 45 freight railroads that currently operate in our state on over 7,800 miles of rail. All 7 Class 1 railroads have a presence in Illinois, along with 3 regional railroads. We have 26 short line railroads and 9 terminal carriers. And in 2010, 1.26 billion tons of goods moved to, from, and within the state of Illinois on our freight railroads, carrying 26% of the freight that comes through Illinois. In 2010, Illinois ranked first in the United States in carloads carried with nearly 11 million carloads carried. The state ranked first in carloads terminated and second in carloads originated here in Illinois. And we were second in tons originated and second in tons terminated here in Illinois. It's a lot of tons. We're also second in the miles of track that we have here in Illinois, and we are third in the tonnage that's carried. Freight railroads are of critical importance as more and more international freight facilities and connectors are driving regional economies in Illinois. So, for instance, up around the Joliet area, we have major intermodal facilities that are made possible by our freight railroad system. We have another intermodal facility in Rochelle, Illinois, and that is also made possible by our extensive freight railroad system. There are 220 of those intermodal freight facilities, of which 192 are transfer centers between truck and rail, 22 are airport truck facilities, and 8 facilities connect all 3 of those modes of transportation, air, truck, and rail. 130 of our intermodal facilities are located in and around the Chicago metropolitan area. On the highway side, we are responsible at the Illinois Department of Transportation for 16,000 miles of road, 8,000 bridges, and we have 2,182 interstate miles on that system. That is part of an overall system here in Illinois, and I think it's really important to remember that is just a small part of the overall system of 140,000 miles of roads and more than 24,000 bridges. And the highway component of our transportation system is part of what makes Illinois a major freight and passenger hub in the nation. There are 2 coast-to-coast interstate highways that come through Illinois, Interstate 90 and Interstate 80. We also have Interstate 70 in the southern part of the state that extends from the east coast to Utah. We also have major north-south corridors, including Interstate 39 that runs up through Rockford into Wisconsin. We have I-55 that runs from Chicago all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and I-57. We also have Interstate 24 and Interstate 64, both in the southern part of the state. Interstate 24 connects Illinois to Kentucky, and Interstate 64 again runs from east to west in the southern part of the state. I-72 here in central Illinois and I-74, of course, connecting nearby here in Champaign, connecting with Interstate 57. Those are all integral parts of our interstate highway system. And we rank third in interstate highway miles in the nation. There are more than 7,200 trucking establishments here in Illinois, along with other non-Illinois-based carriers that take advantage of that extensive network. In 2010, trucks accounted for 63% of our Illinois-based freight movements and almost 800 million tons. And based on the plan study that we just completed for this freight mobility plan for the state of Illinois, we are projecting that by 2040, trucks are going to move 67% of our freight here in Illinois, or over 1.1 billion tons. There's almost 1,100 miles of navigable waterways that either border or pass through the state. And those waterways are critical to our state's economy because what it does is it connects us from Illinois to the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, and from Illinois down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico, and that gives our products access to global markets. And that is critical to our agricultural industry, it's critical to our petroleum industry, it's critical to our coal industry here in Illinois, and that's a system that in the past has been not given the attention or the due work that is needed there, and so that's one of the areas that we're focusing on. But that's important because waterborne freight accounts for 11% of all of our freight volumes and is of critical importance, again, as I mentioned, to the state's industries. There is an extensive aviation system as well here in Illinois, and I know that the Center for Transportation here at the university is doing work on pavements for airports, but we have over 900 landing facilities. There are 128 publicly or privately owned airports, 459 restricted landing areas, 291 heliports, 3 seaplane bases, which surprised the heck out of me, and 2 dedicated balloon ports. Again, something I would have never imagined. Recently, we completed an economic impact study on our state's aviation system, and that study found that Illinois airports contribute $40.9 billion to the economy, and that helps to create or sustain over 337,000 jobs. Also, nearly 50 million passengers plane in Illinois each year, primarily, of course, through O'Hare and Midway and Chicago, and our 3 main cargo airports in Illinois at O'Hare, Chicago Rockford International, and Peoria. And Peoria, obviously, because of Caterpillar being located there. At those airports, they've moved over 1.4 million tons of freight, and most of the goods that move through those airports are high value. Air freight here in Illinois is expected to double by 2040. And so that's something, as we look to the future, that we're going to be looking at is how we can increase capacity here in Illinois in terms of our aviation system to handle that additional cargo. Intercity passenger rail is also an important component of our transportation system. In fiscal year 2012, which ended June 30th last year, intercity passenger rail ridership on our state-sponsored trains totaled over 1.8 million, and out of almost 2.2 million on total ridership, which included some of the Amtrak long-distance trains that travel through Illinois. That was an increase of 92.5% since fiscal year 2006, and an increase of 4.2% over the prior year. And it's really, really important to talk about the corridor that runs from Chicago to St. Louis. That is our high-speed rail corridor that's now under development. We've done a lot of work on that corridor, and we're excited that by 2015 we're going to have trains going 110 miles per hour on 75% of that corridor. For those of you that come from other parts of the world, that doesn't probably sound like a big accomplishment to you, but for us here in Illinois, that's a huge accomplishment, and we are proud of the work that we're doing there. But on that corridor, between 2006 and 2012, we saw a 225% increase in ridership. That's phenomenal, and that was while that corridor was under construction. We haven't even delivered high-speed trains, and we're already experiencing that kind of ridership increase. So I think that points to the importance of us as we move forward, that you look at rail, passenger rail, and in particular high-speed passenger rail, as part of the solution in providing sustainable transportation alternatives here in Illinois. Also, we're working for the first time in 30 years on providing services from Chicago to Dubuque, Iowa, which is up in the northern part of the state, and then from Chicago to the Quad Cities to the west. Those 2 rail corridors are now heavily under engineering and looking at how we can bring service to those corridors by 2015. What is really exciting about all of what's going on in passenger rail is that as part of that initiative, we had a rail car procurement that we worked in partnership with the California Department of Transportation on. And a company, Nippon Sharyo, who has located a manufacturing facility here in Illinois, at Rochelle, Illinois, has built a new facility there. They've hired 250 people. It was announced today by the governor and Secretary Rela Hood that they're building an additional 320,000 square feet to that facility to produce these additional rail cars, and they're going to hire 80 more people. So it is having an impact not only for the people that access the rail system, but for the people that are building those cars and contributing to what we're going to be delivering in terms of passenger rail. So as you can see, we have this tremendous transportation system here in Illinois, and that system all works together. Another thing that I failed to mention is that we also have 52 public transit systems, and I know the one here in Champaign, in the Champaign region, is an extremely successful transit system, and we work very closely with them on some improvements that they are doing, helping them to purchase additional rolling stock. And all of that is part of this 52 public transportation providers across the state of Illinois, and those providers are providing over 700 million rides every year. There's 700 million being provided in the Chicagoland area, and really there's 45 million rides being provided downstate. And that includes 375 million bus rides. And by far, the largest transit provider in Illinois is the Chicago Transit Authority, which operates the second largest public transportation system in the country, and operates over 140 miles of bus routes and 224 miles of rapid transit rail. Metra, which is the suburban commuter rail provider, provides 82 million rides over 11 lines serviced by 241 stations. And PACE, which is the suburban bus group, provides 33 million rides, and it is also responsible for paratransit service in the region. And we've been working in close partnership with PACE on a bus on shoulder initiative up on the Stevenson Expressway in the Chicagoland area, which is Interstate 55. And that bus on shoulder initiative has been extremely successful. It runs from Bolingbrook down into the Loop, East Loop and West Loop. And they've seen ridership double since we started that service just over a year ago. And it is helping to reduce congestion on the Stevenson Expressway during those peak rush hours. And then it's also providing this much cleaner alternative for people wanting to commute back and forth downtown. So with that system in mind, we started embarking on preparing our state long-range transportation plan. And that started just over a year ago. It started a year ago, January, when we called together our consultant who was helping us with that plan and the people and the planners within our own organization to look at what should transportation look like here in Illinois in 40 or 50 years. And what I had said when we first met with this whole group of people is that this has to be a plan that works. It can't be a plan that's just done, that we pulled up, we put on a shelf, it collects dust, or somebody uses it for a doorstop. This one had to be something that was truly meaningful and something that had, actionable items that we can follow, and then that we were going to measure our progress towards doing. And so that long-range transportation plan is built around a number of guiding policies. And I'm going to apologize, I got to put my glasses on here so I can read this. There are a number of these policies that are really important, I think, as we think about transportation in the future. And you, when you graduate from your program and you're working for either the private sector or on the public sector side, you're going to be helping to design and build the system. So it's really important that you understand what's in the long-range transportation plan, and then to think about ways that you can help to make that become a reality here in Illinois. But that plan has a consistent framework for goals, objectives, and then also our desired performance outcomes to help us make informed investment decisions that will help preserve our transportation system, ensure safe travel, and safety is always our #1 priority, and improve the quality of life for all of our residents here in Illinois. The long-range plan is used to help our state be more economically competitive, and as I said earlier, globally competitive as well. I think that's very important. The transportation system is what connects us to those global markets, and it's important that we make sure that that system works seamlessly and it works well together. The policies in this plan include improving transportation safety, because safety is always our #1 concern, and I know I've said that, but I will say that over and over again because it can't be said enough. And that includes not only looking at what we can do on the behavioral side, where we're trying to encourage drivers not to text and drive, not to drink and drive, to make sure they buckle their seat belts every trip, every time, but also to look at engineering side of safety to see if there's ways that we can improve the engineering of our highway system or improve the engineering of our transportation system. For instance, if there's some type of pavement where it can create additional friction to keep people holding the road better, or if we can put up those cable median barriers that you see on some of our interstate system and some on the major routes here in Illinois that can help crossover crashes. Those are the types of engineering solutions that we're going to be looking for and to build upon as we move into the future and to help us improve transportation safety. And as I mentioned, multimodal connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, that is huge here in Illinois. And part of what we did in our state long-range transportation plan was we created a state freight mobility plan. And that freight mobility plan is important. I talked about some of the goods that move through the state, because we want to make sure that we remain the freight hub of the Midwest and the nation. And to do that, we've got to make sure as we're looking at our transportation system that we're looking for gaps in that system that we can fill, or we're looking for weaknesses in that system that need to be addressed. We're also, as I mentioned, very involved with the efficient freight movement, and that, again, is through our freight mobility plan. Another important piece of our state long-range transportation plan that we've really not included in the past when we've looked at things in a long-range manner is human capital. And human capital is involved in a number of aspects of transportation. Particularly, we're looking at how we can make sure that there are enough workers out there, enough people in the trades that can do the work in building our transportation system. We're also making sure, we want to make sure that there's enough engineers to do what the work is that needs to be done and to help us thinking forward and doing things in a smart way. But also, we want to look at transportation-related fields, because we know that right now there's a shortage of truck drivers in the United States, 100,000 truck drivers short. So we need CDL over-the-road truck drivers. We need pilots. There's a shortage of pilots. We need logistics professionals. Especially here in Illinois, logistics is going to be extremely important as we become more and more freight-focused. Also looking at planners. We need planners. I was talking about earlier that, to some people earlier, that the U.S. Maritime Administration was doing a study of our inland waterways, and they were doing a study of the Illinois River. It's called their M55 study, and because the Illinois Department of Transportation does not have any planners in the area of water and multimodal planning, they went to the state of Missouri, and the state of Missouri took the lead on the M55 study for the state of Illinois, which I find totally unacceptable. So human capital is a very important piece of what we're doing at the Department of Transportation, and it ties very closely into that long-range transportation plan. And I would definitely be crucified if I didn't talk about the fact that system preservation and management is also a very important policy for the Department of Transportation. I told you about that vast transportation system, and right now that transportation system is running about, I think, 85% of the roads are in acceptable or better condition, and the bridges, or 92% of our bridges are in acceptable or better condition. But at the end of our multi-year program that we just announced with the governor last week, we're projecting that the roads are only going to be 65% of those roads are going to be in acceptable or better condition, and only 89% of our bridges in acceptable or better condition. And that's because our funding is being constrained by what's happening both at the federal and state levels. So system preservation and management, we're going to be wanting to work closely with the university and with the Illinois Center for Transportation here at the university to think about smarter ways that we can stretch those dollars more and keep our system as upgraded as we possibly can. Another big area of concern for us, and if you ever travel up in the Chicagoland area, you will notice this, is congestion. And we need to address congestion not only through building additional pavement, but also through transportation operations. So we got to start building smart highways. We've got to start thinking about how we can use our existing system and use it to manage traffic better. So that's going to require us to think about how we can incorporate technology into what we're doing to help inform drivers and also to help inform logistics professionals so that we can time deliveries in a way that we're taking some of that congestion pressure off of our system. The other thing that is a guiding policy for us is transportation planning and coordination. Communications and consistent policy direction will help us achieve the kind of long-term vision and sustainable implementation of the vision that will help us in every mode of transportation and help us find those connection opportunities. Transportation finance is another guiding principle. I mentioned it in a couple of the other parts of the policies that we're discussing in our long-range plan. Transportation finance is huge. We have to start thinking about more sustainable ways to fund our transportation system. Right now, we rely heavily on motor fuel taxes and on motor vehicle registration fees. On the motor fuel tax front, in a good way, we are looking at CAFE fuel economy standards moving to 54 miles per gallon by 2025. If that happens, our gallonage-based motor fuel tax, of course, will erode to a point where we're no longer going to have even the level of investments we're making now, which are some can argue, very short. So transportation finance is an area of focus for us. We're very much involved in the conversations. We've started working with the General Assembly on what can happen. I know that Governor Quinn is also very committed to finding ways to fund transportation. He is the transportation governor, and I can attest to that, and I'll talk a little more about that in a little bit. But so we're very focused on that area, and I think that's one of the areas that we're trying to think creatively. Another policy objective that we have is enhancing our economy. So our transportation system is something that we want to help communities leverage. Excuse me. We want to help communities leverage the transportation system to create economic opportunity. This is a huge asset. I mean, seriously. If you've got access to the interstate highway system, I met with a group from Moline, Illinois today, and they brought in a developer, and the developer is going to be doing some work around the mall there, and they wanted access to a 4-lane highway for that particular mall because they said that the stores that they were looking to attract want that access to that highway. And so economic development drives transportation improvements drive economic development. So I think it's really important for us as we go forward that we think about how our transportation system can be leveraged for economic opportunity and to grow the state's opportunities. And one of the big areas that is part of our guiding policies is environmental. The need for sustainability has never been greater, both from an environmental perspective and from an internal budget perspective. And it's very important to live within our means, but it's important for us to do that in a way that is sensitive to the environment. And so sustainability is going to become the fabric of what we do as we go forward at the department. As part of that, we have created a sustainability scorecard that we're going to use on every single project at the Illinois Department of Transportation. And it incorporates a lot of the work that was done through the Illinois Center for Transportation here at the university. We're very excited about the fact that we're actually going to be using that, and I think that that will help bring to light some of the sustainable practices that we've been doing for a very long time but have not been recognized for. And finally, the last guiding policy for us is infrastructure security. And this one's a very important goal as well. It's huge for us, actually. We want to ensure that our bridges are safe from potential terrorist threats. Infrastructure security is at our forefront. To implement these policies, our action plan is going to be organized around those policies. And each policy is accompanied by a set of action items, and we're going to be tracking our progress towards accomplishing what we've set out to do. And then we're going to report that progress on our website. And we want to be able to readjust as we go along. We don't see this as a static plan. We want this to be a dynamic plan that can evolve as we go forward and the circumstances change. And I think that's really important anytime you talk about a planning document. A planning document cannot just be something that you say, this is it, this is what we're going to do, and not be able to adjust through that as you go forward into the future and your circumstances change. So that's an important part of our plan. And our work does not end with the development of the plan, as I mentioned. I talked about the freight mobility plan. I'm excited that as part of the freight mobility plan, we're going to be forming the State Freight Advisory Committee, and we're going to be engaging private businesses, we're going to be engaging other governments, we're going to be engaging the academics of the world in helping us to deliver a better system for freight mobility here in Illinois. And I was fortunate enough to be nominated to the National Freight Advisory Committee. Those decisions hopefully will come down next month. As I mentioned, we're third in the nation in trucking, third in the nation for rail. We're served by all 7 Class 1 railroads. There's very few states that can say that. And at the juncture of the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers with the Illinois River connection, we are connected to the Great Lakes, the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the world. Freight hubs are essential to our position in the business logistics system. As I mentioned, the intermodal centers that we're very much involved with, and also now the port districts here in Illinois. We have 19 port districts, and we have now formed a port district working group. It's an interagency working group, and we're trying to leverage that port system so that we can increase imports and exports into and out of Illinois. We are also developing, as I mentioned, the State Freight Advisory Committee. That will become a permanent fixture in our department. I would encourage all of you that as you move forward in your careers that you pay very close attention to the freight movement, because I think that is really becoming a greater focus, not only here in Illinois, but across the nation. I want to talk to you a little bit about the multi-year program that we unveiled a couple weeks ago. And that program is a $12.65 billion program, and it covers 2014 through 2019, and it includes a $9.5 billion component for highways and bridges. And of that amount, $6.9 billion, or almost $7 billion, is for on the state highway system, and $2.5 billion is for the local highway system. This includes, for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st, $2.24 billion in the program. And there's some really exciting projects we're going to be working on next year, and then hopefully we're going to begin construction on a number of those later this year. One is the Circle Interchange in Chicago. The Circle Interchange is where the Dan Ryan Expressway connects with the Kennedy Expressway, which connects with the Eisenhower Expressway and the Congress Parkway there in Chicago. It is the most congested intersection in the state, not only in the state of Illinois, but in the United States. There are 400,000 vehicles that pass through that intersection every single day. 33,000 of those vehicles are trucks. And we could rebuild that intersection the way it is right now, and it's not going to change a thing. So what we're doing is, when we're looking at the rebuild of that intersection, we're going to be adding capacity within the footprint that we already have, but we're also going to add capacity, the potential for future capacity, so that at some point, as we take a broader look at the expressway system in the Chicagoland area, we can look to see if there are ways to incorporate managed lane strategies, which might include hot lanes, HOV lanes, congested price lanes. And so by doing this project now, knowing that at some point we may want to add that, that's going to impact how we design that particular interchange. And so we've been working with our consultant on getting that done, and we're very excited about that project moving forward. Another project in the multi-year program we just announced is a huge bridge project in the Quad Cities in Moline. It's a bridge that will connect Iowa to Illinois. It's the I-74 bridge. The current bridge is functionally obsolete. There are no shoulders on that bridge. It's a 4-lane bridge, 2 lanes in each direction, but there are no shoulders. So if there is an incident on that bridge, we have to shut the bridge down. That backs up traffic. We have extreme levels of traffic, and particularly during rush hour in that area. So that's another huge project we're working on. We're going to complete the new Mississippi River Bridge we're building in the Metro East next year. I'm very excited about that. It'll probably be in February, so I'll be freezing to death when we're cutting ribbon out there. But if you haven't had a chance, you should go take a look at that bridge in the East St. Louis area. It is a beautiful cable-stayed bridge, and we have made tremendous progress on that project. Excuse me. I have to tell you, right now they're building that bridge. It's coming over from the Illinois side and it's coming over from the Missouri side, and I'm just telling our engineers in the agency that if it doesn't meet when they get to the middle, they're all fired. So we'll have lots of job opportunities. So you guys might want to keep an eye on the progress of that bridge. The program that we introduced, as I mentioned, has the $2.24 billion for 2014. That includes $7.2 billion from the federal government and $1.9 billion in state funding. The proposed highway program will improve 2,100 miles of highways and replace or rehabilitate 517 bridges by the end of 2019. And in order to make sure that the state continues to adhere to federal requirements and that the highway program be fiscally constrained, that good-paying jobs in the construction and related industries are created and preserved, and that we do not overextend our available resources, we make every effort internally to size the highway program appropriately, conservatively, so that we're not overcommitting ourselves, but also addressing the need. We are at the end of the Illinois Jobs Now capital program. Back in 2009, when Governor Quinn was first took the oath of office, we were in the Great Recession. A lot of states here in the United States were stepping back. They're like, we can't afford to spend money, we're not going to spend anything. But the governor worked hard with the General Assembly on creating the Illinois Jobs Now capital program because they felt it was important for us to invest in our infrastructure during this recessionary time so that when we came out of recession, we were positioned to really compete and really strive and grow faster than our neighboring states that chose not to. Anyway, the Illinois Jobs Now capital program included $20 billion for transportation, and that included $16 billion for highways, $3 billion for our transit systems, $850 million for rail, and that was money for the CREATE program, which is to untangle the freight rail mess in Chicago, $150 million for Amtrak improvements, and $400 million for a high-speed rail project that runs again between Chicago and St. Louis, and now Chicago and Detroit. And it also included $120 million for airport improvements. Airports are sometimes an overlooked part of our system, but a very important part of our system. We're very excited that to date we have upgraded we have spent $14.9 billion of that $20 billion, and that has gone to 5,912 projects and supported 180,000 construction and construction-related jobs. I think that is a strong testament to the forward thinking and the state of Illinois' commitment to our transportation system. And if you think on top of this $20 billion commitment, the Illinois Tollway just passed a $12 billion Move Illinois program where they're going to be making major improvements to their system in northeastern Illinois. So that's $32 billion in just 5 years that have been committed to our transportation system. And I think that points to the fact that in the future there are going to be a lot of investments made, and I think a lot of opportunities for you as you graduate and move into your careers. And a very important part of what we're trying to do, though, is trying to be more sustainable. And I've mentioned to you that part of our long-range transportation plan is built around sustainability. So one of the guiding policies, as I mentioned, is to develop a safe, sustainable Illinois multimodal transportation system. And that is where we're going to integrate sustainable practices into all facets of transportation in our planning processes and including all modes of transportation. We have initiated the integration of sustainability through the, and I'm going to read this, through the creation of Sustainable Practices Manager. We created that position. We have the development of the Illinois Livable and Sustainable Transportation Rating and Guide, and that's something we worked on with industry. We worked with the road builders, we worked with the Association of General Contractors. We created that guide, and that is to help advise us on how we can include environmentally sensitive practices into our construction. We were the first state in the country to legislate the use of context-sensitive solutions. And the development, we have also developed as part of the ILAST program, a diesel equipment idling policy. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but what that is while people are working on our construction jobs, a lot of times the trucks are just sitting there with their trucks running while they're trying to get the materials that we're taking off, or they're bringing materials in to be used. And so what we have done is created this policy that limits the amount of time those trucks are idling, so that helps to reduce emissions from those trucks, and also addresses the noise issue if we're operating in a neighborhood. We've also established the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, where we make investments in the bike system here in Illinois and also in other alternative modes of transportation. And we have formed environmental study units in each of our districts. So sustainability has become part of who we are at the Department of Transportation, and we're going to continually strive to reduce, reuse, and recycle materials in the construction of our transportation projects. And we're continually working through the Illinois Center for Transportation and through our transportation partners on doing so. As part of this program, we created that sustainability scorecard. We are also working to reduce inefficiencies with our environmental permitting processes by working closely with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Historic Preservation Agency, and the Federal Highway Administration, federal U.S. EPA, and also federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers. All of us are working together in partnership to try to increase our efficiencies in environmental permitting while being respectful of the environment. We're going to continue to work with our resource agencies to develop better management practices for environmental mitigation. So anytime we go out and do a project, and you might know this, and if it's going to have a wetlands impact, then we've got to buy wetlands credits, or we've got to figure out a way to make investments in wetlands to offset the negative impact we're having related to our projects. So that's an important part for us to continue and develop more best practices in that area. We are also implementing a reporting mechanism for sustainability performance measures for both internal department operations and also for transportation projects. And internally, that's going to be on the operations side, so we're going to be looking at our snow removal practices, and we're going to be looking at, even in the office, how we can increase the use of recycled materials, how we can print less, do more electronically, those types of things. We're also looking to promote sustainable and alternative forms of non-motorized transportation, and that can't be overstated, because one of the things that we're working on right now is our first ever state bike plan. So we're looking at the bike path system here in Illinois. We're going to look for gaps, and then we're also going to look at policies and how we can develop policies that will make it easier for us to expand the use of those modes of transportation. And we're also going to be following through on recommendations from our context-sensitive solution peer exchange committee, and that's a mouthful. We work closely with them on context-sensitive solutions, and that's where we go out and we engage the communities, and they can tell us how they think the transportation system improvements should be done in context with their communities. We're going to conduct a detailed analysis for waterway planning, and we're going to develop and implement an agency-wide training program on the sustainability mission of the department. I think there's a lot of things going on, and as I mentioned, for sustainability, we're looking all the way from system planning, programming of funds, project development, construction, implementation, maintenance, system operations. All of that has to be thought about from a sustainable transportation perspective. And so a lot of what I've talked about that we're going to be doing will help us to do so in those areas. Just without thinking about sustainability, our system would become inoperable, and I think it would not be a system that would be beneficial to the people of Illinois. So I think sustainability is an important part of our future. Recycled materials will help us reduce costs and extend the life of our infrastructure. But it's not just our costs that's going to reduce. It's going to reduce the costs in construction, it's going to reduce the cost in operations and maintaining the system, and also for our system users. It's going to make it less expensive for our system users. So one of the things that we're also doing as we move forward in addressing sustainability is we are actually creating a climate change adaptation plan. And that's going to help us deal with extreme weather events. I think the flooding that occurred over the last week and a half is a prime example of what we have to start thinking about when we're planning for our transportation improvements. we have to think about those extreme events and the impact on our system. So we have to understand what our system vulnerabilities are, and then we have to think about how we can design and build improvements to the system that are sensitive to what those vulnerabilities are, to make our system stronger and that we can keep our state moving forward and have our economy return to normal as quickly as possible after those extreme weather events. We are also planning to do 3 overlay demonstration sections this year, featuring the most environmentally friendly HMA surface mixture ever developed in Illinois and perhaps the nation. We're extremely excited about that. We're going to be letting 3 projects, and it's going to be called Total Recycle Asphalt, and the HMA surface mixture is composed of over 97% reclaimed and recycled materials. And that includes RAP, recycled asphalt pavement, crushed concrete, steel slag, recycled asphalt shingles. We're very excited about this. No newly mined aggregate will be required for this mix. And so we're excited about letting those 3 projects, and the reason we're not at 100% is because they need, and this is something that the center advised us on, is that we still needed a little bit new liquid asphalt in order to give that to counter the hardness of the aged asphalt and the reclaimed materials that we're using. So we're very excited about moving forward with that. That's going to be hopefully something that's going to be recognized nationally. And I thank all of you that were part of that team that helped us pull that together. And not all of our efforts are geared at highways, although highways is an important part of what we do. We use tons, millions of tons of highway materials every year, including air-cooled blast furnace slag, byproduct lime, crumb rubber, fly ash, glass beads, glass cullet, ground granulate, and I got to read this list, ground granulated blast furnace slag, microsilica, reclaimed asphalt pavement, reclaimed asphalt shingles, recycled concrete material, steel reinforcement, steel slag, and wet bottom boiler slag. I have no idea what that is, but we use it in our work. So as you can see, we're very committed to using recycled materials and trying to be as sustainable as we can in our construction activities. And I mentioned the bicycle trails that we're getting ready to do. Those are also part of a sustainable transportation system, as are investments in our transit system. We're also looking at LED lighting. We're also looking beyond that to green-friendly best management practices for our interstate rest areas. All in all, sustainability is about who we are and who we will be going forward. And so I'm pleased that we are able to announce, or maybe it's already been announced, but we are working on a sustainability plan with the University of Illinois here and the Illinois Center for Transportation. We're going to underscore our commitment to sustainability. We're going to partner with the ICT to fund more than $2.6 million in sustainability research over the next 3 years. It's going to be $880,000 a year from fiscal 14 through fiscal 16. And this is going to be extremely important to us as we try to integrate those practices into what we actually do every day. So that technology transfer is going to be key. And I think as part of that, we're looking at bringing on 2 additional people through the center, one to be mostly focused here in the center, on the research side, and then on the transfer side, we're going to have somebody that's primarily located at the Department of Transportation so that we can actually implement everything that we've been working on together. So we're very excited about this new collaboration with the university, and look forward to working more closely with Ahmad and others as we work through that. So as you can see, we have a lot going on in transportation here in Illinois, when I came to the Department of Transportation 8 years ago, I have a public finance background, so I'm mostly focused on finance. And I thought, how interesting can transportation really be? Transportation is transportation. But since I've been there, I have seen how dynamic it is. I came to understand and have a much better understanding of how it touches our lives every single day, as I mentioned when I opened. And transportation is a very dynamic area. It's what's going to keep our economy moving, economy growing, and it's going to help us improve the quality of life, not only for ourselves, but for the people we serve. So I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for indulging me with your patience.